Okay, so database. What are we going to cover in today's class? The basic terminologies. What is data? What is database? And what is database management? And what are the other related terminologies that you should be aware of? And then why do you need to learn database? Like what kind of job that you will do once you learn the database? So the roles that is associated with database, and then different types of models, database models, and what are the models that you're going to learn, particularly in this class, what is the model that you're going to learn. And there are different types of languages available to speak with database server, and what language that we are going to use in this class. And there are a lot of platforms available, and what platform that we are going to use in this class. And what are the basic or the first thing that you will learn when you start doing coding in database, like creating table, creating database, creating table, deleting database, deleting table, insert values into the table. So these are the stuff that you will cover in the basics of SQL programming. So all these things we are going to cover in today's lecture. So let's start with data. What is data? So what is data? It's nothing but the collection of information. Okay, collection of information that is going to be stored electronically, but we are going to store the real world information in a digital format. So that is what we call a digital data. It can be of any type. Even an image is a data, a voice, a sound recording, that is a data. And in my lab, I'm doing, in my BCI lab, we are doing the data, we are recording the brain signal, okay, which is nothing but the frequency. It's called electroencephalography data. That is also a data. So everything that you can save digitally in any different format, if you can save something digitally, that is called data, right? So that it's a general term, but it can cover anything that you can save digitally and process it later. Okay, that's what called data. So based on the scope, based on the purpose, based on the accessibility, and based on the format, you can classify data into different formats. Image format, sound format, sound means frequency, right? Frequency. So there are, see, when you say image, it will boil down like into a pixel. What is pixel? Pixel means a number. Like if you say a pixel, the first pixel, what is the color value of the pixel? If that pixel is of white color, then the number, the pure white means 255. So it boils down into number. Even if you take a sound or acoustic signal, that is again, it's a frequency. Frequency, again, it is a number. So everything will boil down to a number or a text. Agree, right? So anything that it can, the signal can be of any type, but if it will boil down to a number or text. So that is, we are going to process either number or text. So what is database? Collection of data in a structured format. Okay, so you can collect any data, but it should be saved in a format that you can access it. That is called database. Note it down. So collection of data in a structured format, that is the main term. Structured format is called database. So with the database, we are permitting the data, like anyone who is using the database can, like, they can manipulate the data, they can access the data, they can update the data, and they can use it in any way that they want. Okay, so the database is a structured format that facilitate all these things: manipulation of data, access of data, update of data. So that's what you're going to learn: how to create data, how to update it, how to use it, how to manipulate. So that's what you're going to learn in this chapter. And what is database management system? So it's called DBMS. That is a separate course that you will learn on this. Okay, so I think it is mandatory course, DBMS. So database management system is nothing but a systematic method of creating, updating, storing, and retrieving a data from the database. Okay, so in that course, you will learn everything, like from the theoretical concept to the practical concept. That course will cover everything. But in this chapter, you're just going to cover a little bit of theory and a lot of practice. Okay, so next one, database systems. What is that term? So what is data? When someone say database system, it is nothing but data along with the database management system together is called database system. So data along with the database management system together, it is called database system. So all these things are terminology. So just a definition, you may expect it in oral quiz or a practical exam quiz. So please note it down. And query language. What is query language? It's a specialized programming language that is designed specifically for creating data and searching data, creating a database, searching the data in database, retrieving, doing searching and retrieving a particular information from the database. So everything can be done through programming language. So that programming language is called query language. Through that language, you can do everything. So that language is called query language. Database application is a separate software that helps the business user to interact with the database system. So mostly this is the end user system, excuse me. Okay, so what are the roles in database? Like if you learn database and if you're going to work on the database kind of job, what are the basic roles, major job? So it can be database administrator or database designer, database programmer, and database user. What is the difference? So database administrator, he will take care of that security of the main concern will be the security of the data. So his main job will be securing the data from unauthorized access. So providing the rules, enforcing the procedures that will, like, who can access which level of data. So that will be taken care by the database administrator. So all organizations will have a database administrator. His main job is securing the data. So he will give the access, like what level of access can be given to what level of, like, to which people. So that can be taken care by database administrator. And database designer is a role. So the role of the database designer is formatting the data according to the rule. Right? We will see that in detail later on. According to the organization rule. For example, let's take our course. So one student can take only 5 courses. If there is some rule like that, there is a rule like one student can maximum take 5 courses per semester. That is a rule. How to implement that rule in the database design? Or an instructor can teach 3 to 5 courses. How to implement that rule? Okay, so just understanding the rule and designing the database according to that rule is the role of database designer. Note it down. And the third kind of role is database programmer. So what the database programmer will do, he will create database applications. I have answered what is database application in the previous slide. So database application is nothing but a software that helps the user to interact with the database. So this database programmer, what they will do, they will create a software application that will enable the interaction between the end user and the database server. Okay, so that will be enabled by database programmer. So he should be specialized in database language, query language, and also he should be expertised in general purpose programming language. So if you're going to be a database programmer, you should have knowledge and skill in both data query language and also general purpose programming language. Or else if you can say like, you should also know SQL and also you should be expertised in Python to be a database programmer for Python application. So that is the role of database programmer. And the fourth kind of role is the end user, that is the database user. What they will do, he'll be like more consumer kind of user, like he will enter the data, he will access the data or enter the data to the database. Okay, so either read or write, only these accessibility will be provided. Through the application or through the software, he may enter the data into the database or he may read the data from the database. So that is the end user application, end user role. So these are the 4 database roles associated with database. Okay, now let's speak about the data models. What is data model? Data model is used to represent the structure of the data in database. That means what is the rule and how the data should be saved and in what format that we are going to save the data. Based on that, we can go for different types of data modeling. So I have given you few data models like relational model, entity ER model, object relational model, network model, object-oriented database model. There are different types of data models are available. So according to application, according to the end usage, we have to select a particular data model. But the most popular data models are relational model and ER model, entity relationship model, which I have highlighted here. So you will be probably learning ER model and relational model. So you particularly the relational model you will learn in this course, and ER model you will learn in your database course. So first I'll just tell you what is ER model before we do work on relational model. So ER model is also known as entity relationship model. So it has 3 basic concepts: entity, relationship, and attributes. So entity is a real world object. For example, if you take a criteria that a student is registering in 5 courses in a semester, what will be the entity in that scenario? The entity will be course. Okay, because student is registering in a course. The course will be the entity and the student information. There will be a separate table for having the student information, and there will be a separate table to hold the course information. So in this particular scenario, there are 2 entities, student and course. And relationship. So what is the association between these 2 entities? The student is enrolling in the course. This is the relationship. Okay. So that is the relationship. And attribute, the property of the entity. For example, in this case, I told you there are 2 entities, student and the course. The student, what will be the attribute of the student? Student ID, student name, and the year of the student. All those things will be the attribute of student entity. And if you take the course, what is the course number? What is the course description? And what is the section of the course? This will speak about the course entity. So this is the attribute of the course entity. So if you take this scenario, 2 tables are that. That is called entity, and the relationship between these 2 tables is called relationship, and the property of each table is called attributes. So if you go a little bit deeper, you will learn these things in database course, but I'll just tell you what is what. First thing, you have to go through the business rule. As a database designer, first they will go through the rule of the business. For example, if you take this picture, ER rule business, the business rule for this ER diagram is going to be, this is a database for customer and order supplier kind of database. So what are the 3 basic rules that they have to consider when they design the database? A supplier can send many shipments. A shipment is sent by exactly 1 supplier. I'll just take one scenario to make it easier. For example, let's say that in a customer side, a customer can submit many order, but an order should be submitted by exactly one customer. Like that, there will be some business rule. Database designer has to go through the business rule, understand the business rule, and convert it into data model. For example, if you take this rule, first we have to make this clear in some format. So the ER model follows some diagram called ER diagram to make it clear so that the other people who is working on that project will understand. The communication will be easier. So if you take this third rule, a customer can submit many order. That means what? Between the customer and order, that is one to many relationship. And between the order and the customer, there should be only one to one. One order by one customer. One customer can perform many order. So customer to order is one to many, and order to customer is one to one. So like that, we have to first understand what kind of relationship it is. Okay. So there are different types: one to one to many to many, and optional many and mandatory many. So like there are different types of relationship that we can see. You don't need to understand any of this code because that is not part of your this course. You will learn it later on, but I'm just explaining what is ER model. Okay, so based on that, they will follow some symbol to specify what kind of relationship is there between the two entities. Okay, so this is in general is called ER model. But we are not going to follow the ER model. We are going to follow the relational model in this course. So what is relational model? Relational model is nothing but a table. How to create table, and we are going to save all the data in table format, and we are going to access the data from the table. So this table format is called relational model. So this relational model was introduced by EF code in 1970. So let's see the basic elements of this relational model. So the structure of the data is going to be in table format like this, a collection of row and collection of column. Okay. And then data manipulation language to save the data, to create row, to create column. How we are going to do? We are going to do everything through the language called SQL, structured query language. So we are going to use SQL to work on this relational data model. And we are going to, as usual, as I told you in the ER modeling, even in all data model, first thing that we will do is read the business rule, read the requirement. First, read the business rule and then convert that business rule to the data model according to this particular data format. We have to convert that. That is the first thing that we have to do. So in relational database, we are going to deal the same relationship, but in the table format. Okay. So the relational model has table with the collection of rows and columns. So this row and column is the basic element. Row is also called as record. Sometimes I may use the term record, but I will try to stick to the term row. Okay. And then column is also in database language. It is also called as field. Okay. So if you take a field, if you take a column, in that particular column, all of the data will be of same type. If you take a row, that row will be unique. Okay, so only to that. I will give you one more example. If you take a student, I don't have the table. We will do it in our lab practice. If you take a student, okay, I will explain it with this category itself. Product ID, category ID, product code, product name, list price. So this is some marketing kind of table. If you see that this particular product has the product ID 1, category ID 1, and the code of that product is this, and the list of the price of the product is this. Okay. So all these things belongs to a particular category, particular element. That will be the row. And column will be of a particular type. So when we design on the relational database model, these are the rules. You have to follow these rules when we work on the database model. You can note it down. So what are the rules? First thing, it must have a unique name. That means the table that we are going to create in a database should be a unique name. because if you can have the same name, same table in different database, but in a particular database, the table should be unique. Okay. The second thing, every attribute value should be atomic. When I say attribute, it means the column. Okay. That should be atomic in the sense it should not have the multi-value. Like if you say the product code is stored, that should be stored in the same category. Same product should be mentioned by the same name throughout this table. Okay. So that should be atomic. And the third rule is every row should be unique. That means there should not be any repetition. So if there is product ID 3, category ID 1, and product code SG, and the product name Gibson SG, and with this price, this particular row should not be repeated anywhere else. It should be unique. That is one rule for the relational database model. So if you see a particular row, that row should be unique. That should not be any of the column values should not be repeated. Gibson SG can be somewhere, but the Gibson SG with the same product ID, category ID, product code, and list price, that should not be anywhere. Okay. So the whole row, the entire row should not be copied. A few elements, few column can be copied. So that is the third row. And the attributes in table must have unique name. The same thing. If I say category ID, the category ID should represent only by that. If you have another column to represent the same thing, that is not allowed. And the order of the column must be irrelevant. That means if you put the category ID first and product ID second, it should not matter. If you put the list price first and product ID last, it should not matter. The order of the column should not matter. Okay, so that is the fifth rule. And the sixth rule, last rule is the order of the row also should be irrelevant. That means if you put that as a first row and if you, in which order the elements are, the order of the row doesn't matter. Okay, it should not be matter. Okay, it should be irrelevant. So these are the basic rules that we have to consider when we work on relational data model. So for this relational data model, we are going to use a special purpose programming language called SQL. So what is SQL? Note it down. SQL is a structured query language that allows the retrieval and manipulation. Create the table, we can add the data in the table, we can drop the table, we can combine multiple tables to perform query. All these things are possible through structured query language. This SQL particularly developed in 1990s. So the relational data modeling concept was developed in 1970. After 20 years, they came with a query language to work with that relational database. So structured query language, all structured query language will work with relational data model. Okay. So that was developed in 1990. So the main purpose of that SQL is enable the communication between the end user and the database server. So through the SQL, we can talk with database server. Okay, that is the main use. And SQL was developed in 1990s. So far, it is so popular. Still, it is mainly used structured query language. The reason why it is that popular and still it is used by many organizations is because it is fast, powerful, scalable, and portable, and most importantly, it is free. Okay, so that is why SQL is so popular so far. So what is query? Query is nothing but filtering thing. It's like it's a communication between the SQL. So what is SQL query? A code snippet that we will use to connect to the database. So database is nothing but it is a combination of multiple tables will be there in the database. Okay. So we will identify each table with its name. We will identify each row with something called key. We will explain all these things in the next level. But right now for the introduction, I will just going to cover like what is what and how to create a basic table. Okay, we will see those advanced things in the next class. But SQL query is nothing but a code snippet that you will use to create table or to speak to a database. Okay, it can be creating a table. What are the things that we can do? We can do things like creating table, selecting table, that is reading the data and select by selecting a particular row and inserting a new row, updating the existing row and removing the data. So these are the basic operations that we will do by using SQL query language. Okay, so we will do in today's class, we will do select, insert. We will not do update, but we will see how to create table, how to insert table, and next class we will see how to select table and update table. Okay, so first we are going to see how to create table. So for that, we are going to use, there are many separate database management system called SQL Visual Studio. Like that's a separate server based software application that you will use. But for today, for this class, for data programming 2, since you will not do the detailed database concept, we are going to use SQL Lite. It's a package. Okay, it's a package. We are going to import this package to work with the database. Actually, SQL Lite is a C-based library that provides a lightweight, like you cannot use it for heavy database operations. You can use for the lightweight database operations. Okay, so mostly for mobile applications, if you're working on mobile application kind of project, and you have the data, for example, you have the caller information and you have something that you want to save as a relational data modeling in your system. It could be a browser history management or caller information management or anything. Any kind of data in your mobile application, if you want to save it as a data format, then if you prefer relational data modeling, then you can go for SQL Lite, because SQL Lite is designed in a way that it can take a very minimal storage, internal data. It will take it's a very lightweight application. Okay, so you can just use it for any mobile application related database concept. Okay, so the SQL Lite was developed by this person recently. Their head hiring, he developed this interface. Okay, so you can simply access the SQL Lite in your Jupyter notebook file by importing the package. So that's what we are going to do in this class. We are simply going to use a Jupyter notebook, and we are going to import SQL Lite, and we are going to do the database operations. So if you explore the Python for Everybody textbook, they have recommended this SQL Lite application. So you have to install this SQL Lite DB browser. But for this class, we are just going to do all these things simply by using Jupyter notebook, by just importing the SQL Lite. Okay, let's try it with that. Then if it is needed, we can install that software later. So for this class, we are just going to use SQL Lite. We are not going to download or install any browsers, DB browsers. So what is SQL Lite? So SQL Lite is a lightweight language that can work with any kind of SQL query. So SQL easily supports this kind of data types. Integer, all number can be termed as integer. All floating point number, you have to represent the floating point number with real. All character and string is represented as text data type. And if it is not a type, not a number, then it is, I don't think not a number. But null, if you want to save something null, then null is the data type that you have to use. And BLOB is the binary data type. Okay, for Boolean binary data type, you have to use the binary object. So these are the 5 basic data types that you will use in saving that, in working with the data in SQL Lite. And other than that, there is date and time, date, year, time. These are the different time related data types that you can use later. Okay, so these are the basic types that we are going to use when we work with the data in the table. So to import SQL Lite, all you're going to do is this code: import SQL Lite 3. And to connect to the database, to create a new database, first let's do that. You can open a Jupyter notebook file. So parallelly, we will do the lab practice as well. So let's do the lab practice. So we are done with the theoretical concept, basic introduction of database, what is what. All these things I have covered. Now we are going to do the practice session. So how to import SQL, let's start from that. Okay, so you can create a new file, new Python file, Jupyter notebook file. So as I told you, we are not going to use any external software. We are just going to use the SQL Lite, which is the browser server based. So you can simply import it in Jupyter notebook server. We can simply import it from that. So open a separate lab file. So name it as lab 8 or whatever the current lab number is. So to import the SQL Lite package, have to simply give SQL Lite LITE 3. So this is the package that will let you to access the database systems. Like you can use the database, like you can just use the Jupyter notebook like a database accessing, like you can code SQL through Python. You can code SQL through Python. So first we have to create a database. I told you a database will be collection of different tables. Database is nothing but a collection of different tables. So normally the query to create database, if you're using the traditional database setup, then you have to use this code to create a database. Create is the keyword. Database is the keyword. So in database, in structured query language, if you see the uppercase, that means it is a keyword that has a specific meaning. So create is the keyword in structured query language to create something. It could be a database, it could be a table or anything. Create is the keyword and database is the keyword. Okay, so this combinedly, it's very easy. Literally, it has the meaning. You are going to create the database, but since it is uppercase, you have to understand this is the keyword, that you should not use it in anywhere else. It has a specific meaning. And database name. So database name is like you have to give what is the database that you're going to create. You have to give that name. So I have given the example here. Create. It can be, see, I told you it's not a rule. It's a recommended practice. Even if you use the lowercase database, still SQL will accept it. That's why I have given this example like this. But normally it's a thumb rule that you have to always use the keyword in uppercase. Okay. But even if you give it in lowercase, still it will not throw any error. So to create any database, it's the keyword. So note it down. Create database name. With this SQL code, you can create the database. Next one, to delete a database, you have to use the keyword drop. Database is the keyword and what database you're going to delete. Drop database is the name of the database that you want to delete. Okay. That is for database. And a database is nothing but a collection of different tables. A database can have different tables. So how to create table in a database? To create the table, the code is, again, create is the keyword. And then we are going to create table, right? So you have to use the keyword table. SQL is very easy language. It has a little meaning. And then you have to give the table name. Table name. And inside that, you can give what is the table, what are the tables that you're going to create? Like what are the column names? If, for example, if you're going to create a table to save student information, then what we will give? Create table and the name of the table is going to be student. And what could be there in the column or the table? So what it will have? It will have the columns like the ID of the student and the name of the student department, which department the student belongs to, that will be that. And then let's say that there is a like place from where the student is from. Okay, so let's say that there is fourth column that says the place of the student where he is. Okay, so let's say that the student table is going to have 4 columns. So how can we represent that? So we have to say create table and the name of the table. And then we have to give the name of the column. So ID, student ID is the name of the column. And what is that type is? The type of that ID will be in integer. It will not be in decimal. It will not be in floating point. So it will be the whole number. So you have to give the data type of the ID is integer. And the name of the student, it cannot be in number. It should be in text. So you have to give the data type text. So if you recall, the number should be integer, should be in integer, and the string should be in the text, right? So we are just following the data type of the SQL Lite. So the name is going to be in text, and the department is also going to be a string 1. So it is also going to be the text data type. And city of the student is also going to be the string format. So you have to say the data type of that is city is text. Okay. So just note down this syntax. Then I will tell you how we are going to use SQL Lite to execute this. Okay. So this is the syntax to create table. So far we have seen how to create the database, how to drop the database, how to create the database, the table. What is the syntax to create the table? And then how to delete a table. To delete a table, all you need to use this. This is the syntax. Drop is the keyword that will delete. And what you want to delete? You want to delete table. And what table you want to delete? There is student table or customer table, whatever you want to delete, you can just give the table name here. So that is what deleting table. And then how to enter the data into the table. How to enter the data into the table by using SQL. So to enter the data into table, you have to use this keyword. This is the syntax. Insert into. Since I have given it in the uppercase, it means it is the keyword. You have to use the keyword insert into. There should be space between insert and into. And then you have to give the table name where you want to insert this. I want to insert this in table called student. And what you want to insert? I want to insert, if you recall what we have created in the column. ID of the student, name of the student, department of the student, and city of the student. So we have 4 columns. So we are saying we are going to insert the values like the ID of the student is 1, name of the student is John, department of the student is IT, and the place of the student is Savannah. So for that, we have to give the values. You can see the values is in uppercase. That means it is a keyword. So the syntax to enter the data into the table is, note it down, insert into table name, values is the keyword, and inside this parenthesis, you have to pass the values in the same order. ID, name, department, city. In the same order, you have to pass the value. Okay, so this is insert into command. So that's what we are going to do in today's class. Okay, so these 4 things we are going to do in the lab practice session of today's class. So we are going to create the database. We are going to delete the database, and we are going to create a table, and we are going to insert the values into table, and we are going to see how to delete a table. So these 5 operations we are going to learn in today's lab practice. So you can open the Jupyter notebook file. We are going to do this using SQL Lite 3. So open a Jupyter notebook file and connect to the SQL Lite. For that, you have to import the package, import SQL Lite 3. Let's import it. And then we are going to create a database. Normally to create the database, the code, if you recall, the code to create the database is create database name. So if you are using a database application server like SQL Server Management Studio, if you're using something like that, then you have to execute the query like this. But in SQL Lite, to create a database, it's very simple. You have to first create an object because Python is object-oriented programming. So first you have to create the object, right? The function to create an object is called connect. So first you have to call this SQL Lite as an object. You know how to call that as an object, SQL Lite 3 object. That object has lot of function. We are going to use one of the function to create the database. What is the function name to create the database? Connect. Connect is the method that is part of the SQL Lite object. So we are using the connect methods. Please do it parallelly with me. Okay. SQL Lite 3.connect. And then we are going to give what table that we are going to create. So let's say that the database is going to be student.db. Student data. Let's say that the database that we are going to create is called student data underscore data dot db. .db means it's a database system. So if you're creating it using SQL Server Management Studio, you have to execute the query saying that create database SQL underscore data. But since we are doing it through the SQL Lite, this is how you are creating. Import the SQL Lite library and then call the object and call the particular method that will create the database for us. The name of the database is going to be student data underscore w. It doesn't give any error, so it's going through. So now we are going to call this as an object, and then we are going to perform all the operation by calling this object. So let's create a simple placeholder called C, and we are going to call this DB object, and we are going to use this cursor method and see where it is. So in SQLite, if you're executing all these things in SQL, this SQLite, we can use the same query, but we have to pass it through a method called execute method. So if you are simply using some SQL Server Management Studio kind of thing, then you can simply execute this query through that. But since we are using it, executing it through Python, you have to call the object that we have created, the C object that we have created. Okay. So through this object, we are going to execute. For that, we are going to call a method called execute method, which comes with the cursor package, which comes with the SQLite. So simply, you have to call that C dot execute. So execute is the built-in method that comes with SQLite package. So now we are going to create a table in the database that just we have created called student data database. So we are going to create a table. So what is the syntax? SQL syntax to create a table? Create table and the name of the table and the column information. When I say column information, it is the name of the column and the data that we are going to save in that column. So that information should be given. So we are going to execute that SQL code. So create is the syntax, create table, and the name of the table is going to be student ID, student ID and integer, because this is the whole number. Student ID is going to be the whole number, so it is integer. And the name of the student is going to be the second column in the table. So I'm just giving the column name, which is name. And the data type of that name, student name, is not going to be a number. It is going to be a string. So in string, if it is a string data type, in SQLite, you have to say text. And then we are going to save the department of the student. So the column name is going to be DEPT, department. And it is also a string information. So in SQLite, you have to represent it as TEXT, text data type, to represent a string. And then we are going to say the city. The column, the fourth column is city. So everything we have given it in uppercase. So I'm going to give the C in uppercase, city, and that is also a string. So if it is a string, then you have to give text. So let's execute it. If you see this, then what does it mean? It is nothing but object. So we have created an object. The object has been created means successfully you have created a table. The table is created. So we have a table, an empty table with the 4 columns that we can save as many data as we want in a format like ID, name, department, and city. So we have created an empty table in the database called student data. Now we are going to enter data into this table. So to enter the data into the table, if you recall, what is the command that we have to use? The SQL command is insert into, and the name of the table and the values is the keyword, and inside this parenthesis we have to pass all the column values in the same order. If you don't have any value, then you have to say null. Okay, but you cannot leave it. If it has 4 columns, you have to give all 4 columns. So how to pass that query in SQL? So always in SQL you have to say the C is the object, and we are going to execute this query by the execute command, execute method. And the command is insert into. See, that should not be any space between into, and that should be space between insert and into. And the name of the table. What is the name of the table? Student. And what values that we want to enter? Values. And student ID. Let's say that the student ID is 101. And the name of the student is John. And the department of the student is IT. And the student is from. Let me give this in upper double, this big, this one in double quotation. Okay, so, and the city of the student is Savannah. Okay, so be mindful about this parenthesis. Okay, this double quotation closes this. This is the whole SQL command. So you're just passing it as a double quotation. And these things represent the string text information. Even for John, you have to enclose it in single quotation, because to represent it is a text data. It is a string data. And if it is a number, you can simply represent the number. If it is a string data, you have to give it either in single quotation or double quotation. Make sure that you're differentiating between the string and the SQL command. Okay, so let's execute it. So if you don't see any error, that means you have successfully inserted a value in your table that you have just created. And now let's execute few more table. Let's add some few more things into the table. So once you have added it like that, then after some time, after working with other table, after you close the application, if you come back and if you want to enter some more data, then it should be entered in this way. Insert into, and the name of this table. Either you can just pass the value as it is, or you can just do it like that. ID, name, what is the table, the column information, department, and city. So this is the columns of the table student. And then where we want to enter values. What are the values? We are going to add one more student. The ID of the student is going to be 102. And the name of the student is going to be Joe. And the department of the student is going to be CSE. and the place of the student is going to be Statesboro. Okay. And let's do one more thing. For this, I'm just going to copy and paste this code. And I'm just going to change the values. So the third student is going to be student ID. And let's say that Peter is from biology. Let's add one more student. Let's say that is 104. And the name of the student is George. And the department of the student is IT and Statesboro. So we have added 3 more. And let's add one more. The ID of the student is going to be 105. And the name of the student is going to be Mary. And then Mary. And then the department is going to be IT. And the city is going to be Savannah. Okay, so let's execute this. So you get the object value of this. That means the query is executed successfully without any error. Now it's time to see our data, right? It's time to look at our data. So if you go to the lab, the current one that you should be able to see a database. If you go to the current folder, you can see the DB. Do you see the database file? So student data, database file. You can see there is a database that we have created. If you open that in the database management studio, you can see it as a table. Okay, but first let's read it through Jupyter Notebook itself. Okay, by using Python, let's read it in Jupyter Notebook. Okay, maybe let's create a variable data and let's execute a command called select. So I didn't cover it yet, but I told you that we can view the data, right? To view the data, select command. To read the data, we have to use the select command. So the code is select from table name. Okay, select from table name. I'll tell you the syntax. The syntax is going to be select. Give it in uppercase. That means it is a keyword. Keyword and asterisk means select all the columns. All the columns. Asterisk means all the columns, everything. From what? From that table. What is the table name? Student. Okay. So if you want to just select the ID of the student, then you can simply say select ID from student. But if you want to select all the columns from the table student, then we are saying select star from student. So this select from table name is the syntax to read the data from the table. And we are executing this SQL command through the Python by using execute command. And we are saving the result in data. If you run it, it will not say anything. Now we are going to read it because all the information is there as a list in data variable. Now we are going to read it. By using for loop, we can read it. So how can we do that? For I in where? Data. We're going to read it line by line. It has been saved as a different lines and we are going to read it line by line. It has been saved as a list data and we are going to print that result. So when you try to print it, you can see whatever the data that you have entered, you can see that. We are reading it, we are iterating it through the variable data and the data we have saved all the selected data And we are going to go through that data as through the iteration. Through iteration, we are iterating through that so that you can see all the values that you have entered by using insert into command. So in today's lab practice, you have learned how to create a database in SQL Lite and how to create a table in SQL Lite, how to add the data into the table in SQL Lite, and then how to read it by select command and through for loop.